We're going to be working on converting from a percentage to a fraction. Now, converting between the two helps us get a better understanding of how numbers work in general, and there's no other better way to understand how these work than to actually do a question and practice. So let's jump straight into question number 1. We have to convert from 40% into a simplified fraction. So how am I going to do that? Well, 40% is another way of saying 40 over 100. Okay, so the percent means I'm going to have it over 100. So I've got it in a fraction form, so I've done that part. Now I need to simplify it down. So I'm going to simplify 40 over 100 as a fraction by dividing 40 and 100 by a scale of 20. So what I mean is I'm going to cancel my 40 and I'll scale it down to a 2, while I cancel 100 and it's going to go down to a 5. Okay, so my simplified fraction for question 1 is simply 2 over 5. Now moving on to question 2, now we're going to have to convert 120% into a simplified fraction. And again, 120%, the percent is another way of saying 120 over 100. Okay, and again, we've done the fraction part of it. It's in a fraction now, so let's try and simplify it down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel my 120 and it's going to come down to a 6, while I cancel my 100 and it's going to come down to a 5. So my simplified fraction here is simply 6 over 5. Now looking at question 3, we have a little bit of a different question, because we have a little decimal in my percentage. So how are we going to convert 37.5% into a simplified fraction? Well, let's start off with what we know. Well, we know that 37.5% is another way of writing 37.5 over 100. Now, I don't really want to deal with decimal places right now. So what I'm going to do is multiply my numerator and my denominator by 10. Okay, so what that does for me is gets rid of the decimal place, so I don't have to deal with that. I noticed that I didn't actually change the value of the fraction. It's still the same fraction. So now I'm going to have to simplify this fraction. So how to do that? Well, I'm going to look at the factors of 375, okay, by looking at a factor tree. So I'm going to firstly divide by 5, so that's my first factor, and my next factor here will be 75. Now I'm going to divide 75 further down into another 5 and a 15. And 15 breaks down more into 5 and 3. Okay, so that's 375. Now let's look at 1,000. Now 1,000, if I break that down with a factor tree, again I'm going to start off with 5. Okay, now 5, and on this side it should be 200. Now let's break 200 down further. I'm going to use another 5, and on this side it should be 40. Let's continue to break this down. I'm going to use another 5 and an 8. Okay, and that's probably as far as I need to go. Now I'm going to write all these different factors and put it all multiplied and put on the denominator. Okay, so I represented all these numbers into its respective factors. So as you can see, we have 5 multiplied by 5 multiplied by 5 on the top and bottom. Okay, now what does that do? Well, that allows me to cancel the top here and cancel the 5 here and so on. I can cancel all these 5s, okay, because they're on the numerator as well as the denominator. So what's left? My simplified fraction for question number 3 is simply 3 over 8. Okay, so that's how we convert from a percentage to a fraction.